Hello, fellow photographers. Good afternoon. Hopefully you've seen my previous video on tips and tricks with the Sony RX10 Mark IV. Still my favorite camera after all the cameras I've been through. Yes, I have gear acquisition syndrome. I admit I'm an addict. But again, it's something that that feels good in your hand, or something that is unique to some degree, and everybody has their different vices or different likes or dislikes. So whatever camera you have right now, as long as you have everything that fulfills your needs, which this mostly does, okay? You have all those, different modes you can work with as far as, capture modes. I like illustrative, to my likes and favorites, as you can see here behind me. These two at the bottom are the illustrative, standard photograph at the top. But again, I can print out in these, panorama works, if you'd like to call them that way, and all sorts of different things that you can do with this specific camera. But sometimes you need a different tool, because let's face it, you can have something that covers a lot, but then you might need something more specialized, like a doctor, okay? You could be a medical doctor, that sees patients for almost everything, and then consults with or sends you to a specialist. Well, I picked up a specialist. And I've decided to go with the Hasselblad XD1C Mark II 50 megapixel camera. I read up a lot on it, watched a lot of videos, and for me personally, I don't care that it doesn't take good video. I like that it slows me down to some degree, where I have this, what they call their walk-around lens, which is a 45 millimeter. In 35 millimeter terms, that would be a 36 millimeter, close to it anyway. Apertures, f4, nothing too drastic. But I just like the feel of this and the craftsmanship, and it's very simple. But it's also has unique features, I guess, that really piqued my interest. Basically, you just move this little switch over, the battery comes out, tap it once. Basically, that's your formation of the handle. And you just press it right back in. No battery doors or anything to fool with. You have two accessible card slots on the side, for the SD XC cards, the extra fast ones. So you have two different slots. And the reason I like that is because when I'm editing, I don't have to have different card readers or what have you, because it's the same SD cards that are used in the Sony RX10 Mark IV. They use the regular ones. This has, the two rows of pins, so, it has a faster speed for acquiring, photos. But again, when you're looking at a medium format sensor, that's a lot of information that you have to write onto the card. And it does, again, it's not a sports camera, it's not an action camera. The focusing takes a while because each lens basically has the aperture built right into the lens. It's not in the camera body, that's why it's so thin, okay? And for those who utilize flash, it's a good deal because you can synchronize flash all the way up to 1/2000th of a second. Not a big selling point for me, but I just like to have this size of a medium format camera because it's easy to walk around with it. Fantastic grip. Buttons on the back, not a lot, but again, some are programmable. Actually, 3 are programmable. But you have a basically easy to see screen on the back. Okay? And for me, when I have my long distance contacts in, which I do now, I can still read what's on here. I don't have to put my eye up to the viewfinder. And then you just swipe down, if I could do that correct, or is it swipe up? Ha, still learning. You swipe up and you have all these different categories to pick from in your quick menu, which you can change just by holding it down, and a little red X appears, and then you can change it out with something else that you might want besides what's on there. Just like that. I'll have to go back and remember what I had. But basically you have camera settings, swipe across, video settings, not a lot. Again, not a big video camera. I don't take a lot of video, so for me, it's fine. And just your, settings themselves. So everything's on a very swappable screen. And then you can just go to the viewfinder just by pressing the orange button on the top, which is your shutter button. 2 different wheels. Again, I use manual focus, so basically this is the aperture at the front and your shutter speed at the back. You have a pop-up dial for various functions, and believe it or not, this has an all-automatic function as well. And when you're turning the dial, it shows right up there on the camera back. Again, a very simplified screen, okay, a simplified menu, where in a camera of this exquisite nature, I'm going to call it, it's very easy to find what you want to get to. You do have to go through, a learning curve just like any other camera, but this is probably one of the easiest that I've ever had as far as trying to figure out how everything works. Now they do, let's say, use Apple specifically as far as their iPad and their iPhone for their software, which is Focus 2. And there's a lot to be said about the Hasselblad Natural Color Science, which they call HNCS. Yes, HNCS. But the one thing you have to remember is if you do get a camera like this, is that basically that comes out of the camera just in JPEG format, okay? You can shoot RAW and JPEG at the same time, or just RAW or just JPEG. But if you shoot in just JPEG, I found, other than going through some extensive processing that I do with the Sony, the colors that come out of here, and you hear from all the other people that have had Hasselblads or what have you, there's very little that you really have to play around with. Maybe just moving the sensor, not the sensor, but the slider a little bit, when you're going through saturation or contrast or what have you. I mean, it's almost like you don't have to do anything, which is kind of nice. Saves you some time. But I just love walking around with this. I've had it for about 2 weeks now, so I've become very familiar with it. Again, just a simple camera to use. And the files, whew. So let's say you want to take a picture of something and you need to crop in. And actually it's got about 51 megapixels, give or take. But you can really crop into something, I mean, probably 200%, and it's still sharp. But again, it's the lens as well, okay? And speaking of lenses, they are expensive, don't get me wrong. This is the cheapest one, which is just over $1,000. I bought everything here used, so I'm not rich by any means. But I just wanted to get something that gave me an expanded photography journey, but also when you're shooting landscapes or buildings. I shoot Art Deco buildings here. The detail that you get in that, and especially when you print, and if you print large, that is something that you can readily see in your print, and the colors have something to do with it too, but just the impact of seeing that fine detail. And that's the reason I got this camera. Other than the fact, I'm part Swedish, so, handmade in Sweden. And again, did I have to get it? No, I did not have to. But I'm 70 years old now, and I just wanted something that I could experience before I leave this planet that was something that not a lot of people can acquire. But again, I used one, It's about as much money as a decent new 35 millimeter, okay? I think brand new when they first came out, they were over $8,000. They reduced it down to $5,700, which I guess is still the price right now. You can get the 100 megapixel Hasselblad for, I think it's 82. It has some, more refinements in it as far as phase detect autofocus, where this is just contrast detect autofocus. But most of these, I do a lot of manual focusing, because basically you can hold the camera up, okay? You hit the little button in the middle here at the back, which is the star button, and it basically magnifies a small section of what you're looking at, so you can really precisely focus the camera. And again, this is not a fast action camera, not by any means, okay? This is something where you take your time, you compose, you move the camera up to your eye, and really get into that picture taking experience. And again, you could do that with any camera, but again, it's a different type of experience. You don't have to go, again, you don't have to go out and buy this camera. You can utilize your own camera for these, for these matters. You can manually focus most cameras. You don't have to have it on automatic. Again, different strokes for different folks. But basically an all aluminum body, solid one piece. I guess they mill it out of a solid block of aluminum as far as what they say on the site. It's got some heft to it, but it's not heavy. Basically, between the two, and of course, your RX-10 has a big lens. This one does anyway. They almost weigh exactly the same. And I walked 8 miles, 8.2 miles with this yesterday. I could have done it with this as well, okay? Hardly any strain whatsoever, just using these little, peak wrist attachments. But again, just something new. Oh, speaking of lenses, and I'll put up in this video the difference between the cost. This is a Mikoton Zowie, I guess you could call it, optic. It's an 80 millimeter 1.6, okay? So in terms of medium format, that would be like a 64 millimeter. It'd be like a 1.2 and change, okay? So an extremely wide aperture. And I'll tell you, the focusing is like this, okay? That's your depth of field. And of course, it's probably shallower, if you're getting up close to somebody for a portrait or what have you. Metal lens shade. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this. But of course, that's at its smallest aperture, okay, which is f/22. And woo, all the way open to 1.2 and change, or on the lens, 1.6. Weighs just over 2 pounds, a lot of glass in here. But brand new, it's $600. Comparable to some degree, Hasselblad lens, which is an 80 millimeter 1.6, so a little bit darker, but not much. In the neighborhood of $4,700, brand new. Now again, this is manual focus only. There's no autofocus because it doesn't have any attachments at the back for any of the pins on the camera to communicate with. But again, manual focus. Nothing wrong with that. Again, it's not speed. It's not built for speed. It's something that really gives you that bokeh in the background. Okay? Again, the more wide open the lens is, of course, you're going to have more background that is blurred. So again, a good portrait lens or something where you really want to define that one subject and basically blend everything else out. But that's the money you can save on some of these versus the factory optics. And I'm sure most of you people that own Canon cameras know that because, they really haven't opened up their lenses to any other manufacturer per se. And they hold the market on the lenses for their cameras. But again, the Sony RX10 Mark IV is still my favorite camera. Again, it does everything, 24 to 600 millimeter, up to 1200 millimeter if you want to use the clear image zoom. All those different options for how the picture gets taken. It does have a little flippy screen as well, which the Hasselblad does not, but the new 100 megapixel one does. But I still love this camera. This is the one I walked around with yesterday, taking various shots in their illustrative mode, as they like to call it. I used the watercolor to some degree, excuse me. And again, it still takes crystal clear shots all the way up to its 600 millimeter range with f2.4, okay, to 4. And again, the f2.4 doesn't take long to get out of that, that large opening. I think it goes out to about 50, then it starts progressively going quite quickly to f4. But f4 is still, a good amount of light to get into the camera. Even if you're doing night photography, I took a lot of night shots with this last night. Taking some shots down by Miami Beach on Ocean Drive, with the neon lights and what have you. Still takes great pictures. So, if you have this camera, and I've heard rumors, and a lot of people have left it in the comments section, and again, if you leave something in the comments section, I'll try and get back to you as quickly as I can. But a lot of people are saying they're not going to be producing these after the end of the summer. And I guess this is almost the end of the summer. We're almost at the end of September right now. You can pick up a new one still for $1,700, or there's quite a few good used ones. If you look at MPB, which is actually where I bought this Hasselblad from, okay? And I like MPB, and again, I'm not getting paid by anybody. They don't pay me for saying this, but I've always had a pleasant experience with them. And the reason I like them, I think they're the only company, or one of the few, that when you're buying something from them, the pictures that you see are the actual pictures of the merchandise, be it the camera lens or what have you. And I find that quite important, especially when you're, spending money on a new kit. And they give you, prices for trade-ins and all that sort of thing too. Now, I'm not saying somebody else might not be better or worse or what have you, but I've never had a bad experience with MPB. Anyway, just my own opinion, good people. I hope this has been informative. I just wanted to share where my photographic journey is going. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And I look forward to talking to you again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.